Good morning, all. I'm going to ask a favor of you. This is about as loud as I can get today. If you have trouble hearing me, there's a lot of room up here. I really mean it. I have to get through 2 classes today. I've been sick for 5 days. And it might help if you move up if you can't hear me very well. Here comes Alan. There you go. There's a chair right there, Alan, if you want it. But also, Annie brought in rhubarb, which for me brings back wonderful memories of playing with my G.I. Joes in my mother's rhubarb forest in our garden. And I still wonder, after 50 years, if I still have toys in that garden, in the house I grew up at, buried in amongst the stalks of the rhubarb plant, if there's a this or a that there. But it's been
You didn't share any heroes with Pastor Alofen for Sunday's children's devotion. You might have had heroes for him to...
I questioned whether a 2-year-old would have a superhero, but let's move on beyond that. I remember reading superhero magazines as I sat in the barber shop waiting for my inevitable flat top as a 4-year-old. But yeah, that brought back some memories for me. We are in Amos chapter 8 and 9. It's the end of the book. And there is gospel here, some marvelous, magnificent gospel, and some remarkable doctrinal opportunity to talk about God's omnipresence if we have time. So let's get right into this. By the way, image here is from northern Israel. It's really, today they would call it southern Syria, but some of the ruins that are there in the upper part of Upper Galilee, about where Dan, the city of Dan is, Laish, and you can see kind of a structure. That's a Crusader castle on the hill in the background. That's not from biblical times. The stuff in the foreground, however, is from Roman times. So that gets us back to maybe Jesus or 100 years after Jesus. So some fallen structures, because our text is going to talk about David's fallen tent and so forth. Anybody recognize the red and white thing on the left? It is not an oil derrick. It is, you're a little bit too new with cell tower. It's just a radio tower, that's all. So we got a specific era of telecommunication back there. But something from around the city of, no, it's south of Aleppo. Anyway, around the city of Dan. Let's go to chapter 8. Can those of you who are in the back hear me okay? Rachel, you're okay? All right. You're okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, did I mention the rhubarb? I did. That's right. That's what got us on to, okay, never mind.
Help yourselves, you guys.
Help yourself. Yeah, there you go. There are no leaves, only stalks. Okay, just making sure. Okay. This is what the sovereign Lord showed me, a basket of ripe fruit. What do you see, Amos? He asked. A basket of ripe fruit, I answered. Then the Lord said to me, the time is ripe for my people Israel. I will spare them no longer. I think the NIV does a marvelous job here with the pun. There is something called, I suppose it's onomatopoeia or something like that. It's a pun, a play on words between ripe fruit, kayets, and the word kates, which really means end. So our translator has done ripe fruit versus ripe. So it's actually quite a bit further apart in Hebrew. The time of my people Israel has come to an end would be a more wooden way of doing it in English, but you get the wordplay there? So yeah, the Lord sometimes does this. He does it with Jeremiah also. In the opening verses of Jeremiah chapter 1, the Lord has this kind of wordplay with his prophets. So Israel is not going to be spared any longer. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, the songs in the temple will turn to wailing. Many, many bodies flung everywhere. And again we get this word, hush. Remember that from last time? The word for silence in Hebrew is hush, like our hush. Hus really in Hebrew. But so bodies everywhere. What a terrible image. But to just get our focus here, what temple is this? We were in Israel in the verse before. What temple? When do we usually use the word temple? Jerusalem, yeah, Solomon's temple, right? And that's what he's talking about here. But there's going to be damage to Solomon's temple. Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over, that we can sell grain, and the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat, skimping the measure, boosting the price, and cheating with dishonest scales, buying the poor with silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, selling even the sweepings with the wheat. When do you add sawdust to your wheat?
When you get paid by the pound.
Yeah, it's when you're trying to cheat or punish someone. Who famously, apart from, do you know this? Who famously ate a lot of sawdust in their bread in the last century? Prisoners of war. The Germans put sawdust in their bread to stretch it, to use less, if they got bread. But usually, yeah. No, let's go on. And there are a couple jokes about that even in Hogan's Heroes, but it was pretty famously done. I have the Time Life history of World War II, and the POWs talk about that. About you could taste it when they had too much. They get a wooden taste and more of a grind in the bread. You can't chew it all the way up. There are just some parts of it that just don't, like gristle in your meat, that kind of thing. So you have to make a choice, don't you? Right? Spit it out or swallow it. Which one's it going to be? That kind of a thing. So what's happening here in these verses? When will the new moon be over that we can sell grain? When will the Sabbath be ended that we can market wheat? What you have here are merchants outside the city, impatient and looking at their watches. You've closed the city because of these festivals, the religious festivals, but we've got business to do here. So when are you going to open up? And then the real thought behind it is we're going to skimp on the measure and boost the price and buy the poor and the needy and so forth and sell the sweepings with the wheat and all of that. So you have which commandment in particular, or commandments, are being violated here?
7, stealing.
That's one. Which other ones?
Well, third, they are honoring the Sabbath.
Right, they're not honoring the Sabbath. You've got fifth commandment. You've got buying the poor. You have actual slavery going on, right? You have violation of the word of God. That's the second commandment. And a denial of God. That's the first commandment. You've got all kinds of things here. Also, perhaps coveting their neighbor's silver. That'd be the 9th commandment, and on and on. It just keeps going, doesn't it? You stay down here in the market stalls and talk to people, and you realize they're violating, in essence, both halves of the law. They're not loving God. They're not loving one another. But really, it's that third commandment issue of, I'm sick and tired of this Sabbath thing and this new moon thing. Let's get to business. Let's get down to business. So, and I apologize, I actually found an excellent picture of Jerusalem with marketplace sellers outside the city in 1925, and I got busy before class. It's not on the slide, but I did have the picture, I promise. Let's ooh and ah as if I have it on the, never mind. So, yeah. The Lord has sworn by the pride of Jacob, I will never forget anything they have done. These words here, I will never forget what they have done. The Lord has sworn. This is God taking an oath. This is judgment, isn't it? Yeah, I'll remember this sin of yours a long, long time. Then he moves on. Verses 8 to 14 are a different kettle of fish. Do you see what the picture is of here? Do you recognize that? This is a map of the Nile. Okay? So the big blue at the top is the Mediterranean Sea, and the blobby blue blob on the right is the Red Sea. Just ignore that. But the blue vein in the middle is the Nile, and it breaks up, as rivers often do when they get down to the sea. It breaks up into what's called a delta. Okay? And incidentally, if you're curious about it, the land of Goshen, back in the days of Moses, where the Israelites lived, were in the last arm of the delta to the right. So the closest part to Israel, in essence, but maybe not way up by the sea. They might have been down a little bit further south. And then if you go, I don't know if you can read the word Heliopolis, is that possible? I don't have my stick handy, but if they were about there, Joseph's wife was from there. Remember that Joseph got to marry a girl? Her dad was priest of that place. If you go east, directly out of Heliopolis, do you see how you would hit the upper end of the Red Sea? And the thing about that, with regard to the Exodus, is that upper arm of the Red Sea on the left side there is the terrain. We talked about this when I did Exodus a couple of years ago, but the terrain is very much like the teeth of a comb. So I'll do it this way. So that if you're over here and you're going to move toward the Red Sea, there are hills that run perpendicular to the direction you're going, parallel with your direction, perpendicular to the sea. So that if you get in between here and here, or you get in between here and here, you got these sharp banks. So if you can picture this, Pharaoh's chariots are behind you, and the Red Sea's in front of you. You know, little kids ask this in Sunday school. How come they didn't run, north or south, up or down? Well, the answer is they couldn't. The geography of the place has got you stuck in like in the teeth of that comb. Does that make sense? That's the direness of the situation of the Israelites, and it goes all the way up and down that arm of the Red Sea. Here's a good word. Those undulations of the land, right? Okay. Do you see, though, and this will help us with our text, do you see, this is a really interesting slide because it tells you where the pyramids and things are and the Sphinx and everything. There are hotels that look down on the pyramids today in Cairo. That's how close it is. But if you're down there and you see where the green has kind of overlapped the brown or the tan, right? That's the flood stage of the Nile. So cities that are on the Nile, the Egyptian cities, are always back out a few, maybe a few hundred yards or even a mile away from the water where it is at its lowest part. So people often wonder, how come we're so far away? You take a vacation there. How come we're so far away from the Nile? Well, in the spring, it's going to flood. It'll be, and this little ramp out here will be where they launch the boats from. That just sort of shoving down into the desert in the summer or the winter time. But in the spring, the river will be all the way up there. That's what the Nile does. It floods, and all the silt and the good stuff out of the south, which is where the Nile is a river that runs south to north. So it's coming down out of the hills in the south, in Cush and Ethiopia and so forth. It brings it all down, floods, and then they can grow, right? So that's when they plant. Is as soon as the Nile begins to flood, then they get their crops in, then the Nile floods, and they've got some grain, rice, and then some interesting vegetables that we don't eat here. Weird stuff like rhubarb and things like that, and then so that's the flood stage. So, verse 8. Will not the land tremble for this, and all who live in it? The whole land will rise like the Nile. So not just the river, though. When does the land rise up? I heard somebody. Earthquake, yeah, like an earthquake. Remember at the beginning of the book, Amos said, he talks about that earthquake in the reign of King Uzziah. Yeah, so he's reminding the people, this can happen again. This earthquake thing can happen again. It'll be stirred up and then it'll sink like the river of Egypt. Don't be too quick with this one. The river of Egypt, the Wadi of Egypt, is not the Nile. The Nile floods and then recedes, but there is about if you go over maybe on that map 2 or 3 fingers away from the top of the delta into the Sinai Peninsula, there is a little finger of a gulch that goes up into the Mediterranean up there. That's actually the border of Egypt. And it's called the Wadi or the River of Egypt. And it's almost always dry. It's only fed by rain. Or sometimes melting snow. In 1921, they had so much snow in Israel that they had 3 feet of snow in Jerusalem. And they had no idea what to do. What do we do? We don't own any shovels, or a couple of spades. They have no way to shovel snow. Well, what do they do when it snows that much? Yeah, you wait about 6 hours. Yeah, don't worry, it'll be gone. But everybody goes out and take pictures and everything like that. When I was a missionary in Washington State, the snowfall gets up to sometimes 3-4 inches. Sometimes, about once every 2 years. But the kids would make snowmen. You know how big their snowmen are? They're little dinky snowmen. Yeah. You make a snowball, and then a snowball, and then a snowball, and put sticks in, and that's your snowman. And my wife and I would just laugh. We'd see these on fence posts and things like those are their snowmen. And they would ask us, well, how big are your snowmen? I'd say, well, sometimes 6 feet tall. They would never believe us. But my brother and I once made an entire defensive line out of snowmen. And then we ran plays against it. There was a lot of jumping and diving and stuff like that back in the the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. That was a lot of fun. All right. So the it's up like the Nile and then shrink down like that little meager river of Egypt. That's the earthquake being pictured. Huge and then nothing. That's what it is. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. How can the Lord make the sun disappear at noon? Well, you have that one miracle, right? But otherwise, how is it possible? An eclipse or something like that. Or really, really dense, thick clouds. Yeah, one or the other. And it could be any of those things. I will darken the earth in broad daylight. Of course, this also is a prophecy of what? The darkness at noon? It's the crucifixion, yeah. So there's a little foreshadowing there of what's coming in chapter 9. If you're content putting the crucifixion here, and many of our Lutheran forefathers back in the 1700s loved to do that. And I have to admit, I've caught the fever. I love to do that too. To see Christ everywhere in the Old Testament is a joy and a gift. I will turn your religious feasts into mourning and all your singing into weeping. I will make all of you wear sackcloth and shave your heads. What religious festival got turned into grieving on Good Friday? Passover. Yeah. I will make that time like mourning for an only son, and the end of it like a bitter day, a bad day. Let's just keep going here. But notice, though, here in verses 8 to 10, we've had a darkening of the sky on that day. See at the beginning of verse 9? We have 3 of those in chapter 8. In that day, in those days, in that day. So when you triple something, it's often a sign of certainty, or like a superlative in Hebrew. Not necessarily 3 different days, but that day, those days, that day, this is surely coming. Certainly coming. And this first example gets us to a darkening of the sky and grieving and mourning, right? Now the second group, 11 and 12. The days are coming, declares the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine through the land, not a famine of food or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. A famine of the law and gospel. What do people do when there's no more word of God?
Turn to idols?
Yeah. Or superstition, or whatever they feel like. Yeah, they start just coming up with stuff on their own. People will often scoff at religion, but when there isn't any, they start making it up. We need to trust in something, to put our faith in something, no matter who we are. I have mixed feelings about this new Texas law. You know what I'm talking about? Brand new. They want to. There's some lawmakers who want to stick the 10 Commandments in all the public school classrooms in Texas. As a good Lutheran, my first question is, which 10 Commandments? Because we number them differently. You know, that the whole Orthodox Church, about half of the Jews, all of the Catholics, all of the Russian Orthodox, all the Eastern Orthodox, all of the Lutherans, number the 10 Commandments the way that you and I have been used to doing it our whole lives. And then there is one newer group of Jews and a lot of Reformed Christians who decided a long time ago they were just going to throw away everything that they are afraid is too Catholic. And they came up with a new way of numbering the 10 Commandments. We talked about this a while ago. How long ago was that? I gave you slides on the numbering of the commandments. Do you remember that? That was like 2 years ago, something like that. But different systems of numbering the commandments. But a problem there is when you have the Word of God up and not someone explaining it, then is it valuable? Well, the Word of God is always valuable, but you end up with just law and no gospel, and you have a problem there, don't you? I had a basketball coach. I went to public school, and in high school I had a basketball coach who had the words God, family, team was his motto on the wall. He's a very godly man. Very unusual ideas about coaching and when to hit a guy in the head with a basketball as he's running. It was one of our drills, and other things. But he got very close to preaching to us several times. And I was kind of on the lookout for it, but a lot of my teammates weren't and wondered what's going on here and what denomination are we as a team? That kind of a thing. But I like that he put God, God, family, you take care of, and your team. These are all important things. He didn't have school on there, which was a curiosity for our principal. So let the principal imagine where it goes. I'll continue. Okay. Men will stagger from sea to sea and wander from north to east, searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it. Why aren't they wandering to the west? Because it's the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah. Why aren't they wandering to the south? Because it's desert. So north and east are, and in fact, east is kind of desert too. So and when you're in Israel, you're kind of locked in. There's not a lot of places to go. But they will not find it. In that day, and this is the third one now. So the second one we had famine of the word of God and staggering. Now the third in that day, the lovely young women and strong young men will faint because of thirst. They who swear by the shame of Samaria, shame, boshet in Hebrew, can also mean the Baal of Samaria. Do you remember King Saul had a son named Ishbaal? But they spell it Ishbosheth in Hebrew in the Bible and so forth. So Baal, instead of having to say Baal, they would say Bosheth, which is shame instead. That's, I can't think what we have here, instead of the Baal of Samaria, but a false god. As surely as your God lives, O Dan, as surely as the God of Beersheba lives, they will fall never to rise again. So these false gods, Dan way up north, Beersheba down south, Samaria just north of us, all false gods. So now you have thirst, collapse, death, fainting, dying is what's coming. It's a pretty strong chapter, isn't it? I've preached one sermon on Amos chapter 8 in my lifetime. It was back in 2007. But haven't often visited this in the pulpit. Of course, I only get 18 a year. So I prefer to be in the Gospels, but every once in a while. Chapter 9, or any questions on chapter 8 first? Let's get into chapter 9. And just a little bit of law yet. I saw the Lord standing by the altar. Identify that phrase. What is Amos, what is he seeing?
Lord at his temple.
Yeah, it's a vision, right? Yeah, he's seeing a vision of the Lord in the temple in Jerusalem. I saw the Lord standing by the altar. There's a definite article here. What is the altar?
The most holy place.
Oh, I think it's the big bronze altar out in the courtyard where all the sacrifices get made, the great big one. The one that you have to climb steps to, except they didn't have steps. You have to climb a ramp to get up it. Do you know why they didn't have steps? The Lord explains it as he tells them to make it. He says, I don't want anyone to accidentally see inside of a guy's robe. So make it a ramp, a long one, so the priests can go up there. And because the problem is they're working, they're cutting up animals and throwing stuff here and there, and they're just covered with a robe. And so let's be decent about this. Let's not offend anybody. So I saw the Lord standing by the altar, and he said, strike the tops of the pillars so that the thresholds shake. Now these could be those two pillars that stood in front of the holy place. They had two names, Jachin and Boaz, that were these gigantic pillars in front. And it could be those pillars he's talking about. But being in Jerusalem and the Temple of Solomon, it's just loaded with pillars. Solomon's colonnade and so forth. It could be everything. I don't know which it is. But it's pillars, plural at least. So that the thresholds shake. Bring them down on the heads of all the people. Those who are left I will kill by the sword. No one will get away. None will escape. He's talking about the end of the temple, isn't he? The destruction of the temple. The pillars will shake. The pillars will fall. People are going to die. They're going to be killed. Nobody will escape. When did this happen? It happened, well, it's going to happen when the Babylonians come and destroy Solomon's temple, the one that Amos is talking about. But it would also happen not long after Jesus ascends into heaven, when I'm going to call him the prince, Zerubbabel, after the Israelites came back from the exile, they rebuild the temple, and Zerubbabel is their prince. It's often called Zerubbabel's temple. One guy tried to change that. He tried to change the name of this famous thing. You know who that was? Herod. Herod the Great. He added stuff and made it prettier and all this, but then the people kept calling it Zerubbabel's temple. I think Herod hoped they would call it Herod's temple. Oh, it's the third temple. Well, no, it's not. It's still Zerubbabel's temple. You can't always give yourself glory by renaming something. And so Herod kind of fails there. But this is destroyed in in the year 70 A.D. The Roman general's name was Titus, and the year after he destroyed Jerusalem, burned the temple and all that, he became Roman emperor. So he's Emperor Titus after that, but he was General Titus before this. In fact, the heat was so massive that the gold that had decorated Herod's temple melted and ran. And the Jews were out there, even as the Romans are running at them to kill them, the Jews are out there with knives picking the gold out of the sand and off the rocks that had fallen down, and risking their lives, and often losing their lives because they were trying to get the gold that had run down from the temple rooftop, and so forth. So happened after Amos's time, but happened also, 40 years after Christ ascended into heaven, in the lifetime of the apostles still. A couple books of the Bible have still not yet been written at the time of the destruction of the temple. One, in Hebrews, the temple still seems to be intact. But you get to Jude, and it seems like the temple's not there anymore, and the writings of John the Apostle. So that makes sense. We think that Jude and John were written in the 80s or early 90s AD, but Hebrews before then. Am I getting too deep into chronology of the New Testament writing here? But anyway, okay. All right. Yeah, none will get away. None will escape. Though they dig down, and now this list. So, they dig down to the depths of the grave. From there my hand will take them. Can anybody escape God by just dying? No. Can anybody escape God by, say, having themselves cremated? No. Do you know who the first person in New Ulm to be cremated was? Dr. Howard Vogel. Do you know why he was cremated?
He went to a foreign country, I don't know if it was Russia or China, and picked up Africa, okay, and he picked up a disease.
Picked up a disease. Are you hearing this? Dr. Howard Vogel had gone away and came back with this disease, and he was concerned that if they embalmed him, it would survive. So he asked to be cremated. That's, if you know Doc Ann Vogel, that's her dad. Yeah.
Didn't he come across Russia? He came on a train.
The exact route that Doc Vogel took is unknown to me. I just know the ending of the story and not the entertaining middle of the story.
I heard him
Yeah.
speak after that before he got really sick.
Uh-huh.
Come back from Russia, but that rail line goes all the way across Asia.
The Trans-Siberian Railroad, yeah. Yeah. Well, the Orient Express. Yeah. Yeah. If you ever see Agatha Christie on a train with you, get off. Yeah, sorry. Though they climb up to the heavens, from there I will bring them down. What does this sound like? There are other passages like this, aren't there? You cannot hide from God. But David says it in a positive way. If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I go down to the depths, you are there. The Lord tells Amos, if they dig away, I'm still going to find them. If they try to climb up to the heavens. Who tried to climb up to the heavens, perhaps?
People dying in the flood or the Bay Tower.
Or the Tower of Babel, yeah. Though they hide themselves on top of Carmel, there I will hunt them down and seize them. For an ordinary Jew, Carmel is about the highest you can get. It's their Hermon, right? Ironically, because there was a Hermon in Israel, but it was a farther away mountain. And then this one. Though they hide from me at the bottom of the sea, there I will command the serpent to bite them. I don't know if Nachash here is this serpent. Anybody know what this thing is? It's the reason I didn't go very far into the Pacific Ocean when I was there. But it's the moray eel. And this thing is about 12, 15 feet long. The head is like this big. And all it wants to do is eat you. You know, that's its life. Or it could be one of these. This happens to be a sand tiger shark, but one of the smaller of the really vicious sharks. But I don't know if serpent here it means one of these things or something else. There was a serpent. There are a couple of serpents in ancient Phoenician, Canaanite mythology. Would God haul one of those out to talk about? Well, he does in the book of Job. There are 5 different monsters in the book of Job. We have in the sermon cards. I mean, no, not the sermon cards. The connection cards that you guys sign every Sunday, and I sign for Alan's sake about once a month. Otherwise, I get put on the list, you know. Just Smith, right, with a May.
I recognize the name.
Yeah. So, we have a little boy in our congregation who is obsessed with Behemoth and Leviathan, especially Leviathan. He wants, and every week he asks about Leviathan. And his questions get weirder and more crazy all the time. I have no idea what his father or what his mother or who it is in the family talks about this, but that's all he wants to know about every week. And I've thought about maybe I should just preach on it. And Pastor Sharp said, I'll do it in a children's devotion. Well, he hasn't done that yet, and well, maybe, because it's been going on for, I'm not exaggerating, a year. We have more than 50 of these cards. Talk about Leviathan. Is he a monster? Is he a dinosaur? What is Leviathan? And in the book of Job, because he also asked, are there other monsters in the Bible? And the answer is, yeah, in Job there are 5. Should I tell you about them? Maybe I shouldn't. You know, I don't know. My usual response is, read the rest of the Bible, then I'll talk about this. You know, whether it's Revelation, and that's always the 3rd grade boys. Every year, the 3rd grade boys. They get about 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks into the school year, and the teacher, it's usually been Mrs. Shane here, although now she's took a call, but will have to call me and, can you talk about Revelation, please, Pastor? So the boys have gotten proficient at reading now, and they've decided they're going to read the Bible, and where do they start? Revelation. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but then I'll tell them, I want you to read the Gospels, though. You know, read the rest of the Bible first. Well, that's boring. No, it's not. Read the Bible.
Actually, it's not.
No, it's not, but it is cool. All right. Though they are driven into exile by their enemies, there I will command the sword to slay them. So not even exile will get you to escape from God. I will fix my eyes upon them for evil and not for good. I think bad would have been better here than evil. For bad rather than for good, but okay, our NIV decided to go with evil here. But the omnipotence of God, of course, is here. God can do anything. But also he's emphasizing really his omnipresence. God can be everywhere and is at the same time. Now, this doctrine, though, got some of our Lutheran theologians back in the 17th century, 18th century, the 1600s and 17, about 2 or 3 generations after Luther's time. It got some of our guys into trouble because sometimes a guy in his scholarship forgets to go out to lunch with the other pastors once in a while. And he just stays home and does scholarship. I'm looking at you, Smith. So don't forget to get out there and talk to people, which I do try to do. But some of them began to say, well, God is a spirit. A spirit has no boundaries, right? A spirit having no body does not have limits. And therefore, God as a spirit, without losing any of his divinity, any of his, and then they go on and on, none of his compassion, none of his grace, can inhabit everything all at once, correct? Wonderful. But you started with God as a spirit. And what is Christ? Oops. Christ took on flesh and has not given it up. So how do you do omnipresence and Christ in the flesh? And then you've got our theologians coming up with new words you may never have heard before. I don't know how deeply I should go into this, and we got to get to the gospel section here, so I won't burden you with too much. But they came up with, besides omnipresence, they came up with just the Latin word for presence. Like also he is, and they came up with things like, he is quick. Like he can be there and then there and then there, except that's what we say about the angels, who are not omnipresent, but they are all over the place. I'm hiccuping. And we say that about Satan, who is not omnipresent. But I don't like to use language that we reserve for those spirits and apply it also to Christ. What we have is a mystery. I like that word a lot better. Certainly a miracle. Christ is God and has all the attributes of God. Christ is man and has the attributes of man that are not sinful, but with this idea of being omnipotent, no problem. Omniscient, no problem. The other omnis that we don't usually teach, like omnisanct, all holy and so forth, we sing about it, don't always teach it. But then the omnipresent one with Christ, is he in our hearts? Yes. And he sends the Holy Spirit to be with us too. So trust that, and can we just allow it to be a mystery? I think that probably is the wisest. Yeah. Once in a while, a really smart guy can paint himself into a corner, which I've actually done. In reality, the stairs were over there of this basement my brother and I painted. And he painted himself to the stairs, and I was going the other way and realized I can't finish, And we're using not just latex I could wash off my shoes, but this block fill that, well, I did get out of it. But let's go on to our verses. I'll tell you that later if you want. I will tell you how. And the windows were only, this big. Not even in those days could I fit through that kind of a window. Today it would be like Winnie the Pooh in that one. I'll never mind. But let's just go on. The Lord Almighty, look at that list of names there. He who touches the earth and it melts, and all who live in it mourn. The whole land rises like the Nile, that sinks like the river of Egypt. He who built, just had that in the last chapter, didn't we? He who builds his lofty palace in the heavens and sets its foundation on the earth. Ooh, how tall is heaven? Really, really, really tall, right? But I just like that the lofty palace is in the heavens. And who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out over the face of the land. The Lord is his name. This reminds me of stuff that God says in Job. Does the rain have a father? And so forth. And, you got pictures in Job of the Lord having containers of hail and snow and stuff and calling out the rain and so forth. God knows where it all comes from. Are not you Israelites the same to me as the Cushites, declares the Lord? Ooh, if he knows everything, what's the difference between one group of people and another? You Israelites think that you're so great. Why? What, because I had mercy on them once, on you once? But now you're turning away from me. That's the message here. How are you different than the Cushites? And then he goes on, did I not bring Israel up from Egypt, the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Arameans from Kir? And here we have, the Israelites up from Egypt. Out of Egypt I have called my son, right? And the Philistines from Caphtor, which is Crete. The Philistines are an amalgam of a couple of different races. Have I talked about the Philistines with you? Didn't I tell you that the work of John Brugge and the archaeology of the Philistines and so forth? I think I went through that with you once upon a time. Then the Arameans, evidently Kir, wherever it was, I don't actually know. Somewhere out of the northeast, out of someplace beyond Babylon and so forth. Babylon was bounded on the north. Before it became, Babylon was just a city. It was part of the Assyrian Empire. And the southern limit was the Euphrates. The northern limit of Assyria was really the Tigris. And above that was a thin stretch of land that bore the name of the mountain that Noah landed on. Remember that mountain? Ararat? That kingdom was called Urartu. And it was about the same size as Assyria. And the grandfather of Tiglath-Pileser III. So you had to go back in time. There's a Sargon and an Esarhaddon, and whichever one it was. This guy conquered Urartu sometime around the time of, Solomon? Or so. It's not part of the scriptural record, but it's in their records of these peoples. And it doubled the size of Assyria in like one big battle, and suddenly they controlled all of that. And then, so when Babylon conquered Assyria, which we're going to come to in the book of Habakkuk, coming up later on in our study here, then that also turned itself inside out to become Babylon. It's a fascinating study of these things. But then the other major contestant up there was, you see, in the upper left of all of that, coming out of Turkey. Do you kind of see where that would be? Wait, I gotta have it. No, my stick. Somebody made the stick. Oh, here it is. Somebody put my stick closer. How inconvenient. So this is Turkey up here. And out of here, this is where the Apostle Paul grew up. And out of there was a kingdom in the Old Testament times called Hattusas, or the Hittites. You recognize that word? And for a very long time, biblical critics they kind of stuck to that name, the Hittites, because the Bible talks about Hittites there and Hittites here and all this stuff. David knew a Hittite. Abraham had friends who were Hittites. Who are all these Hittites? And critics of the Bible said, there's no record of the Hittites ever being anywhere. That's just Bible writers making up a name. And then, somebody found this pile, this garbage pile of about 10,000 clay tablets about this big. Okay, 10,000. And they are the records of a certain pharaoh and this outpost of the Hittite empire called Amarna. And they're called the Amarna letters. And they don't only talk about the Hittites, but this is the record of all of their trade receipts. It's like the most boring archaeological find ever of, how many tablets do you want of how much grain and barley and spelt and whatever else you're getting and fish and so forth, and how come we're short 100 fish on this delivery, and that kind of, that's the really interesting stuff in these Amarna letters, okay? But all to the king of the Hittites. And overnight, it shut all those Bible critics up. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe there was a Hittite empire. Sure, fine. Like, the Lord is good, a refuge in a day of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. And he kicks everybody else in the behind every once in a while, doesn't he? Yeah, so surely the eyes of the sovereign Lord are on the sinful kingdom. I will destroy it from the face of the earth, yet I will not totally destroy the house of Jacob, declares the Lord. Who is he leaving a little remnant for? Well, Christ isn't here yet. So let's go on with this. This marvelous now, things all of a sudden are going to take this turn. For I will give the command, and I will shake the house of Israel among all the nations, as grain is shaken in a sieve. Not a pebble will reach the ground. Why do you shake grain in a sieve if you're an ancient person? To get the junk out of it, right? So that you're not putting sawdust in your wheat, for the bread and so forth. All the sinners among my people will die by the sword. All those who say disaster will not overtake or meet us. So that the captivity is coming. But then he says, in that day, I will restore David's fallen tent. I will repair its broken places, restore its ruins, and build it as it used to be. What is David? To understand this, we have to start here. What is David's fallen tent? I mean, is it Jerusalem? Or is it something else? If you get to broken places, ruins, you can see Judah, right? Jerusalem in this. But if you go back to tent and leave it sit there for a minute, you're going to land on, especially with the verse that was previous, I will shake the house of Israel among the nations and so forth. I'm going to land on David's fallen tent being the house of David. David's family. Yeah. I will restore David's family. You see, after the Babylonian exile, the last kings, Josiah, had a baby named Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, Zedekiah, the famous Final Four. We'll talk about that more. If you're not a basketball fan, don't worry about it. But after King Zedekiah gets taken to Babylon with a bronze hook in his nose, and gets taken away. He's blinded, his sons are killed in front of him, he gets taken away. No king of Israel will ever come back. When the exiles do come back, they have a prince who is from the line of David. If you open up to Matthew and read the genealogy of Jesus, you will find the name Zerubbabel. That's this guy who, when they came back from the exile, was the prince when they were rebuilding the temple. It's the temple of Zerubbabel. But he was not king. He was never king. Because when they came back, who is king? Cyrus the Great, the king of Persia. He's the one who let them come back. He's still, they're Persian subjects. He lets them come back. But then after a while, if you've read the book of Daniel, or at least remember the Sunday school stories from Daniel. Remember the statue with the 4 different kinds of metal and so forth? Gold stands for Persia. But that'll be replaced by the silver torso of the giant statue. Silver stands for Babylon. No, Babylon's already gone. I'm sorry. Persia's followed by is it the Medes? And then you get down to finally bronze, and then finally at the bottom it's iron mixed with clay, and that's the Romans in the end. Okay? And in Roman times, the temple is still there, as Zerubbabel's temple. But you have this family that's gone down, but there's still no king. Who's the king by Roman times? Who's on the coin? Caesar. Yeah, they still don't have a king. Caesar brings in a puppet king, but he's not a Jew. What nationality is Herod? Do you know? He's an Edomite. He's an Idumean. He's not from Jacob, he's from Esau, which was this kick in the teeth to the Israel. The Romans were pretty good at kicking the Israelites in the teeth. They take somebody from Esau's family and make him king, and then they rename Israel. They rename Canaan. What do they name it? Philistia. That's our word Palestine. That's the Latin pronunciation of Palestine. Or Philistia is Palestine. Palestine. And so the Romans just did everything they could to we got to keep pushing the Jews down. Why? Because if we don't, they're going to get uppity. Because what had happened, it's not simply because I could just say, oh, they're anti-Semitic. But what had happened 100 years before? The Jews rose up against their Greek kings and the Maccabees and overthrew them. And now there are still Jews in the Bible. There are only a couple of them that we meet. One of them is one of Jesus' disciples. They are zealots. And they are, at any given moment, any given day, boy, if the wind blows wrong, the zealots are going to draw their swords and start killing people. Because they wanted to murder all of the Romans. The Romans are worried about the Jews rising up. So Pilate, when he's got Jesus on trial, and people are saying crucify him, he doesn't want to go against the Jews because the Jews might rise up and kill him. So you got to placate them somehow. And the thing is that when the Romans put a new guy on the governor's chair in Israel, it was supposed to be an honor, but it never ended well for any of those governors. If they got out with their lives, they were fortunate. But often they didn't. And sometimes you had to do nothing, like Felix, toward the end of the book of Acts. He arrests Paul and then does nothing with him for 2 years. Then the new guy, Festus, comes and sends and puts him on trial, but Felix was afraid to do anything with him. These are all guys who got the position after Pontius Pilate. Those are all the governors of Judea, just as Pilate was. But the one who takes over David's fallen tent, though, is Christ. So repair its broken places, restore its ruins. How much ruin in the people of Israel was there? They were lost. They were looking for something. There were a lot of them that were possessed by demons or that were being afflicted with leprosy and paralysis and all kinds of diseases. And that poor woman with the flow of blood for I forget if it's 12 or 14 years, 12 years, and so on. And Amos says, and build it as it used to be. How far back are we going to go to get to figure out what the used to be is? Because is it just back to David? No. It's back to the garden. I'm gonna start to tear up. That's how far back this goes. It's before the fall. That's what Christ does. He takes us back. In fact, it's better than Adam and Eve had it. That's what he's taking us back to. He's bringing us to paradise, so that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations that bear my name, declares the Lord, who will do these things. A promise from God. Just a couple verses left. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman. Can you imagine a guy who's trying to plant and plant and plant? and the guy suddenly overtakes the reaper from last year because there's so much crop to bring in that they can't do it before the plowman shows up in the springtime. We're still working here. That's how much crop there is. And the planter by the one treading grapes. The grape pickers are coming and the planter is still out. New wine will drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills. I will bring back, and the wine presses were on the hillsides because you need gravity, to make olive oil, to make wine and so forth. So these olive presses and grape presses were on the hillsides. And they would run out the bottom and they would put them into jugs. Except what if you don't have enough jugs? Now you just got wine coming down the hillsides. You've got rivers of wine. I will bring back my exiled people Israel. They will rebuild the ruin in the time of Uzziah. This is our king here. By the time Uzziah dies, the northern kingdom is less than 20 years, 17 years from the exile. Amos is making a prophecy that's going to be in your lifetime, you people. They're going to go into exile. I'm going to bring them all back. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. This isn't a picture of the return from exile. What's this a picture of? It's heaven. This is heaven. Rebuild the ruined cities, live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. You make gardens and you eat all the fruit. It'll never get stolen. It's all yours. You go out in the shade and reach up with a lazy hand and pick off an orange, and that's my breakfast. That's the image here of heaven. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them, says the Lord your God. So Israel will never be uprooted. They will make gardens. They will eat my fruit. They'll be brought back, and on and on and on and on. The Lord's picture of heaven just excels here until Amos just runs out of ink, says the Lord your God. Delightful image, though, of the coming of Christ, of heaven. This was my first sermon, this chapter. It was Christmas of 1994 at Northwestern College. Still a delight to revisit this again and again and again. I preached on it once or twice here at St. Paul's as well. Where we get a couple of different Christmas sermons going, and I get to do one of them. So always a delight. Any questions or comments about this? Marvelous chapter, 9th chapter of Amos. Was all of that law worth this marvelous beauty, this gemstone of gospel here at the end? It's a delight.
We need closure.
Yeah, we can. Hosea will do the same thing, a whole bunch, but he'll do it in one chapter. Law, gospel. So it's coming again. So, and that'll be next week, okay? We will visit Obadiah, and we'll talk about the relationship of Obadiah with the prophet Jeremiah and where Obadiah goes. Is it really old or just kind of old? Is he the first of the minor prophets or one of the last? There's kind of a question. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to resolve the question, but let you wonder about it. So until then, God bless you. Take some rhubarb if you wish. Thanks for letting me do this. Have a great day. Have a great week. You've been listening to Invisible Church, the Bible study podcast from St. Paul's Lutheran Church, New Ulm, Minnesota.